Hello everyone, I am Amanda from your local public library, and today we are going to be diving into the world of love for siblings by discussing the following three novels. They Went Left by Monica Hesse, Lost in the Neverwoods by Aiden Thomas, and Strange Creatures by Phoebe North. Now I know what you're thinking, why would I want to read about siblings when I barely like my own? Well, these books will hopefully bring you into a world of understanding and realizing that sometimes your siblings can be the gift of being your confidants, best friends, or even just someone to talk to about things you just can't talk with adults about. They Went Left by Monica Hesse is a historical fiction novel that follows 18-year-old Sophia Letterman, a victim of the Holocaust, in her quest to find her brother after their liberation. Sophia is a strong-willed girl who unfortunately experiences the worst parts of humanity, well, really, inhumanity. After losing her parents, aunt, and grandmother to the gas chambers, all Sophia has to keep her going is to protect her younger brother, Abek. She does her best to secure a position for Abek at one of the camps as an errand boy for her commander, but then, without being able to tell him, she is sent away to Gross-Rosen concentration camp alone. This is where her fight became the hardest. There's something about not knowing what is happening to the last person on earth you share blood with, and it drives her to push through until salvation. Now that she is free, and after being released from the hospital, she is doing everything in her power to find Abek, her sweet lost brother. When she doesn't find him at their old family home in Sosnowiec, Poland, she leaves the comfort of the memories that she once had, the family friend that she found there, Gozia, and the protection of the Russian soldier who took her under his wing, Dima, to find her brother. She takes a train with what little money she was able to steal away from Dima to head to Fornwald, a displaced persons camp that may be where her brother was sent after he was released from the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. It is here where her healing really begins. As her suppressed memories flood sleep, turning those dreams into nightmares, she becomes close with her cabin mates, Miriam and Breen. She also feels herself drawn to the solace that Yosef, another resident of the camp, gives her in his silent, secretive presence. While she is piecing back the puzzle that is her mind, what comes to the surface may drive her deeper into despair, or help her to build back up what she has lost. The key to it all, as Sophia sees it, is to find her brother and start again. What this story tells us is that life is fleeting and to hold what we love close because we don't know what will happen. Sophia isn't a perfect, adoring older sister. She is just a girl who was dealt the worst hand in life and is doing whatever she can to bring some form of her former normalcy back. Sophia, although not explicitly written in the novel, probably had times when being the responsible older sister to Abek, pre-Holocaust, was frustrating. However, the story only shows what happens when you lose everything, especially at a young age, with an even younger brother to care for when the world is on fire. The story also touches on the long-term suffering from World War II, especially for the children that had no way to fight, like Sophia and Abek. Monica Hesse did her best to write as closely to the nonfiction accounts through her heavy research of World War II to give an accurate representation of what children like her characters went through after they were freed. The worst part is having to build a life up again as a child or as a newly budding adult like Sophia. While a large majority of the story is dark and traumatic, and maybe even difficult to stomach, the other parts of Sophia's story bring warmth and joy, as well as humbling those of us who will, hopefully, never know the reality that Monica Hesse describes in They Went Left. Wendy Darling, the main character from Lost in the Neverwoods by Aiden Thomas, knows a bit of what Sophia Letterman went through, but with a different magical touch. Just as you may have guessed, the Wendy in this tale is the same Wendy you may remember from your younger days when someone would read to you the stories of the infamous Peter Pan and his Neverland. However, this Wendy is 5 years older, and the truth of what happened is a lot darker than the fairy tale. Wendy Darling was found in the woods behind her parents' home on her 13th birthday, and her brothers, Michael and John, missing. In fact, prior to her discovery, all three siblings were lost to their parents for 6 months. Wendy, feeling guilty and suffering from a form of amnesia, grows up to 18 never knowing what happened in that time frame. Now that children are disappearing again 5 years later, Wendy notices that she is absent-mindedly drawing a boy in the margins of her papers or on napkins, as well as a tree with twisted roots that she cannot quite remember. It frightens her, and not even the fairy light around her bed can keep the dark nightmares away. Then, one day driving home, a dark, shadowy creature falls onto her truck as she is driving from the hospital where she volunteers. She swerves, and then swerves again, to miss the body laying in the road. She leaves her truck, noticing the claw marks on the hood, and goes toward the body. To her surprise, she recognizes the face as the one she hasn't been able to stop drawing, with eyes like the stars and auburn hair, only older than what she remembered. He wakes, and upon seeing her, says her name. She doesn't want to believe that this is her Peter Pan from the stories that her mother used to tell her, and she then told her brothers before they went missing, but it is the only explanation that makes sense. This is the start of Wendy's path to finding the truth about Peter Pan, the children going missing, and about what really happened to her brothers all those years ago. While the story does have a magical element to it, it focuses on the bond between Wendy and her brothers, a bond that makes her believe that she could do whatever it takes, fight any monster, trek into the unknown, if only to find her brothers again. What is so fascinating about this story is the touch of fantasy mixed with the reality that Aiden Thomas is able to deliver to the readers. Peter Pan may be a fairy tale, but in this story he is still a regular boy, with wants like everyone else. He is able to experience the good parts of being a teenager, but this aging is also his downfall. Wendy, through the eyes of Peter, starts to see the world as a ray of light instead of just darkness as she is so long before. The emo Wendy starts to become the savior Wendy, and she is able to come back out of the shell she built to fight for what is really important: rescuing her brothers. Like Zofia, Wendy feels responsible for protecting her younger brothers and rescuing them from wherever they have been whisked away to, with the help and guidance of Peter Pan from her childhood. Lost in the Neverwoods is a tale of strength, love, bonding, and recovering from the monsters in the dark, real or fantasy. While Zofia and Wendy are the older sisters trying to save their younger brothers, our next book is actually the other way around. Phoebe North's Strange Creature starts out with the perspective of Annie, a year younger than her troubled older brother Jamie. When the two were very small, they were thick as thieves, having their own languages and becoming closer than any best friends could ever be. Their minds and souls were two halves of one whole. When they were together, they dreamed and built a world away from reality that they called Gumlea. In Gumlea, they were free to be who they felt they really were, and safe away from everyone else. Then they start to get older, and Jamie went to middle school, leaving Annie and Gumlea behind. Annie, frustrated because she was his shadow and they were always one, becomes angry with Jamie. The laws of Gumlea and the world they built were being forgotten by Jamie, and it was Annie's goal to remind him not to leave her and their world behind, or he would have to suffer the consequences. Jamie, as puberty was upon him, became embarrassed by the fantasy that they came up with, and tried to deny himself the imagination of Gumlea, deciding to hide his true self from everyone, including Annie. Finally, Annie reached a breaking point, and they fought in the woods right by the gateway into Gumlea. She runs, he stays with his new best friend from school, and the bond feels severed between them. Then the next day, Jamie goes off to school like normal, but he doesn't come back. Annie, desperate to bring Jamie home, knows that he went to Gumlea without her and is trapped there by a pirate who holds him bound in ropes. She sees this in her dreams, and the laws of Gumlea will not let her in unless she has Jamie with her. She turns to the rites and rituals of Gumlea to allow her into the veil, which separates the two worlds, and to get Jamie back. No one knows that she is doing this, that she sees him in her sleep tied up in the bottom of a ship with a pirate holding him hostage. Annie knows no one will believe her visions of Jamie and Gumlea, and starts working on how to get him back herself, marking her the weirdo of her school. Through this long journey of Jamie gone, Annie becomes close to Vidya, her brother's girlfriend before he disappeared, and decides she may be the piece needed to bring her older brother home. While it is not quite as magical as Neverland or Peter Pan, the story dives right into those tight bonds between Annie and Jamie and how they could only be themselves with each other, more understanding than anyone else can. Usually this type of connection is reserved for twins, but a year born apart is close enough for these two. Annie and Jamie turn to the world of Gumlea for a reason that many teenagers may be able to relate to. They both could not relate or confide in their parents, nor did they believe that their peers would understand them. Siblings are supposed to accept you and protect you, and Annie believes this wholeheartedly. Jamie and Annie hiding their fantasy side in order to fit in with the crowd around them and keeping the magic they shared for themselves only is something that a lot of teenagers and young adults may be able to relate to in a society with standards that do not allow anything deviating from the norm. However, they both have to grow up, and Annie realizes that she has to find comfort and wholeness in herself if she wants to be of any use to saving Jamie. I do feel that I would be remiss if I did not also label this novel with a trigger warning due to some of the more graphic imagery that takes place in the story. If the readers can feel comfortable with this in mind, then Strange Creatures by Phoebe North is a book that will grant the perception of getting older, losing the magic of childhood imagination and the tight strings that bind siblings together. Now, at the end of reading all these novels, you may feel like you need to give your sibling a hug, a big old kiss on the cheek, or a word of gratitude. Go for it, within reason and their comfort. If they ask what made you feel grateful and loving towards them, tell them about They Went Left by Monica Hesse, Lost in the Neverwood by Aiden Thomas, Strange Creatures by Phoebe North, and of course about me, Amanda, the public librarian who suggested these books in her book talk, For the Love of Siblings. Thanks for tuning in and have a great week.